see you.
Coach, you ready?
Yeah, I'm all good, man.
Everyone else ready? I was looking to say more. Go ahead.
Coach, do you have an injury update on Avery Davis? Or Joe Wilkins and Joey Tennant, what's kind of his status?
Yeah, Avery Davis, he tore his ACL. He'll be back at some point. It was funny, he was a part of the team meeting today. JT scored a touchdown the other day in practice, and I watch on film, Avery Davis is sprinting. I'm like, oh, is that where we're at? But no, Joe Wilkins is out. He had Liz Frank. He had surgery yesterday. We expect him to be back for fall camp and fall ready to go. And surgery was great. And Joey Tenona's out with a concussion. He's been out for a couple of weeks, and it was a pretty bad one. And so he's kind of, I think very slowly starting to get back into physical work. But, he's a young kid, supposed to be in high school now. So we're taking our time and making sure we're waiting for his mind and his body to be right.
And then halfway through the spring, what are you kind of most pleased with, just overall?
I'm really pleased with our coaches, in that we have some really, really good coaches at every single position. And we challenged them to start the scrimmage today with a short yardage scrimmage. And it was great to see, man, a good battle between the O-line and D-line and physicality and being able to run the ball and stopping the run is something that I believe we're going to have to be able to do. And I think the ability for these position coaches to get with the coordinators and understand the new schemes on offense and defense, and it's been really, really good to see, man. And I'm really happy with the progression this team is making.
And then speaking of the O-line, what's kind of like that guard battle like with Kristofic, Lug, and Spindler?
It's been a battle. It's been a battle. And, the thing about it is that it's that healthy competition that I want, and I hope that we continue to see is that, guys that all want the same position, but they're able to, respect each other and push each other and really, really just, push each other to be where they need to be, but also but also just be able to understand that, hey, it's a battle, right? It's a battle. So it's been really, really good to see.
And then lastly for me, with Avery Davis, what's kind of his value as a leader in that young receiver?
Yeah, I'm sure Coach Stuckey leans on him heavily. I like to get sometimes a pulse of the team for maybe being a returning captain. Him and J-Pat, your two returning captains are both injured. And so I put a lot of ownership on them. Hey, your job's still to be a leader. You're not even out there in practice, but how can you lead as a captain? And so they've been great, man. They've been sounding boards for me. They're working hard, trying to get back to obviously being able to play and contribute, but they've been doing a great job.
Coach, as far as Braden Lindsey's concerned, one of the senior guys in your wide receiver room, have you seen him develop more as a leader? Because you had experience, when he was here, or when you were here last year. Have you seen him develop as a leader, and what have you seen him impart on the young guys?
Yeah, I think the one thing I've seen more than anything out of Braden Lindsey is his workload has risen. And he wasn't a guy last year that I saw in many special teams drills, and he was the guy early on that when I got with Coach Mason, I'm like, Braden Lindsey's got to be a guy to help us with special teams because it's going to help him as he tries to reach his goals at the next level. And so I looked at some of his numbers early in spring ball in terms of his workload and those type of things, and they were really high. And it was like, we got to be careful with Braden Lindsey. And every day his workload has been higher than it's ever been. And so he's becoming tough, man. He's blocking and he's making plays. And so I've been really pleased with the play of him.
I'm not going to ask you about the quarterback battle because I think I've asked you 7 questions about that already, so we're going to pass on that. But there's so many different battles on this team right now here in the spring. Are you really just a big fan of how much healthy competition you're seeing from your guys this early on?
It's the only way to get better, and if there isn't competition, we got to create competition. We have to find ways to push these kids, and because they're all competitors. So if they're not competing, they're really not going to push themselves to the ultimate limit. And so I want to see that, man. I want to see offense, defense within your own position pushing each other. But then the ability to get everybody to do this, right, and become a team. And we have to be a team. We got to compete offense and defense. We got to compete within our position, but we got to be a team. And so I've been happy with it. I've been happy with the competition and happy with us continue to progress as a team. But we still have a ways to go.
Last one for me. You mentioned the healthy competition. You mentioned the guys kind of coming together. Have you really seen that this is kind of a case of, yes, we are competing for, starting spots, starting roles, but we're also coming together to be the Notre Dame football team?
That's it. There's nothing more important. I say it every day than understanding that there's nothing more important than this football team and that you're doing it at the University of Notre Dame. And so we all have our own selfish goals, and for them to continue to understand with team success is going to come individual success. And so continue to work to be the best version of you, but understand it's still about the team and what we can do to become the best team we can be.
You mentioned a lot of healthy competition so far in this spring practice session. How would you say the energy of the team has been day in, day out? Have you had to juice these guys up and they're showing up ready to go?
No, they've been good. I mean, I think that like any bunch of college students, they all need a little bit of motivation. And so that's the fun part sometimes, being able to say, okay, what do we need? What does this team need today? And I remember I think it was Tuesday's practice, meeting started I think 6:45 maybe, and I could just feel a little bit dry about 6:42, 43. I'm like, okay, they need a little bit of today. And so in that meeting, we had to get after them, we had to push them, we had to challenge them because they respond to being challenged. I'll say it again, they're ultimate competitors. So if you challenge them, they're going to respond. And so they've been great. They've been great. In the days that they're slow, a little bit sluggish, just challenge them. Find a way to challenge them, and you'll see them rise.
If you don't mind pressing into that one a little bit, what are some ways you find yourself challenging them? Is it goal setting? Is it directly telling them what they need to work on? What are some ways that you found work for you?
It could be in a team meeting, it can be walking into individual meetings, it can be in an individual drill at practice, and be a team drill at practice. It's just being very intentional in your actions sometimes, not repulsive. Right, I think you see that a lot of coaches in terms of repulsive, in terms of they respond, all of a sudden something happens, they can lose their minds. In terms of no, a lot of the things I do is intentional. It's a feel, okay, this group needs this. Hey, this player might need this today. And sometimes a challenge can be, come here, put your hand around his shoulder and challenge them, you gotta be better. Sometimes you gotta raise your voice. Sometimes you gotta show them clips, bad clips. Hey, is this who we are, or what's going to be our standard of how we want to practice and play? And so I think that's an everyday challenge of myself, is to say, what does this team or this individual need today?
One of the things I learned most definitively today was that Coach Stuck is all about detail. I don't know if that's something that is a point of emphasis passed down from you, or if that's something that's completely brought about from him. But I know that that's a big thing for your coaching as well. So how does that line up?
I think that's a program philosophy, but something that he's continue to driven that message that, you're only going to be as great as the attention to detail as you have. And so I think we all can have this beautiful portrait that we want, but it's still within the details of how you get it. And so I think at every position that we have, man, is that how do we continue to become more detail oriented, right? It's not always about the end result, but the details to accomplish that end result.
Coach, one thing I talked to, like I said, I talked to your father about. He was mentioning just how great of a guy you are, how easygoing you are, but he also says people know you mean business. And so how do you, I guess, communicate that to your guys, that you mean business, through that competitive aspect that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think you set standards and you're very clear on holding them accountable, right? And so to me, I don't know if that means you mean business, but it means that, hey, if you're a leader, you set standards, but you're willing to hold others accountable to that standard, right? If you don't, then you're just a good person, right? Or you're a nice guy. But to me, the ultimate objective of being a leader is to making sure we hold these guys to the standards that we set, and we're very clear on the standards that we want. And so that to me is how any great thing is accomplished.
What's the one game you got circled on your calendar this year?
Gosh, you would say the first one, but people are going to make it a big deal because of who you're playing. But it's always the next one, right? One game, one life, and the last one's Oklahoma State. Spring game is practice 15, and obviously the next one would be the one we play in Columbus, Ohio. But every once in a while you take a peek. Every once in a while you got to remember who you're playing. But I think the focus every day has to be, how do we accomplish the most we can out of this day, right? And sometimes we all need motivation, so we take a peek down the road and say, okay, what are we preparing for? Okay, but to me, the challenge is what can we do to maximize this day? I don't care if it's a practice day, an off day, but there's a way to maximize this day, and how close can we get to that maximum level?
All right, Coach, we're going to end it with a Zoom question.
Hey, Coach, I have a question for you about the competition. You've talked a lot about how leadership and accountability. Ultimately, when your team arrives, it's the players kind of hold themselves accountable and hold to a standard and things like that. Just from a discipline standpoint, is the same thing true from a competition standpoint? Like, where you feel like the team has kind of figured it out when it's not just you or the coaches that have to sort of create that competition or make that push, where it actually starts coming from your players and from your leadership? Is it the same thing in that regard?
No, I think it means more when it comes from the players, right? And when coaches hold you accountable, it's, all right, this coach is what he's supposed to do. When players start holding each other accountable, if you respect each other, that's to me what great things happen. But it starts with respect. You got to be able to respect the guy that is holding you accountable, because when you don't, all of a sudden it turns like I'm being attacked. And so it starts with it's the same thing I think is from coach to player. It starts with trust, right? And build that trust, because you can push people as far as they trust you. And the minute you don't trust somebody, you just feel like you're being attacked. And so I like to focus on making sure we are building the trust and then holding each other accountable. But when players hold each other accountable, that's a great sign.
All right, that is the final question. Thanks.
All right, good.
I thought you were joking.